Okay, so when we sat down to map out how we would have the discussions about the FLT and who we'd like to comment on Finnish leadership, one of the things that was important to me was to really get representation from a Finnish company that's on a growth journey, someone that's expanded recently and that was profitable, making money and expanding into new markets and new countries so that we had a good frame of reference for Finnish leadership. And when I thought about which we could go for, Solita was top of the list. And so today we welcome Outi Sivonen. Outi, pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Anneli, would you do the honors?
Yeah, sure. So here's what I found online about you. You are the Chief HR Officer at Solita. Solita is a technology, data and design house headquartered in Finland with about 2,000 employees and offices in 8 countries. You were born in Eastern Finland. You are a Master of Social Science and have previously worked at Finnair, Telia, Corporate Spirit and Elisa. You have 2 teenage kids and your hobbies are tennis and knitting. You have quite recently also studied to become a coach and you were nominated as a Mentor of the Year by Nordic Women in Tech. You have written a book called Company Cultures at Crossroads, Yrityskulttuurit murroksessa, which does not yet exist in English. Simplified, these are the main points of the book. 1. Being able to self-manage is an important skill for an individual in any knowledge-based job. However, autonomy should not result in organizations full of hero employees who drive their own agenda or burn out. 2. Rather, companies should focus on becoming community-managed organizations. They should help employees gain skills to operate in and contribute to communities, skills such as inclusion, caring, or giving and receiving feedback. 3. Community-managed organizations do not mean leader-less organizations. They require leaders with skills to listen and read signals coming from the organization, leaders who take decisions and do not outsource it to the employees or the community. Leaders also need to understand how their own behaviors and everything they do and say impact the company culture. You have said, and I quote, "Leadership is not a role, it's a behavior." And I quote again, "All communities have someone who uses power, be it the leader or not. And within the community, we need to be able to talk about that too." Do you recognize yourself of this description? And what are the topics at Finnish corporate world which you currently feel you are not able to talk about openly?
Yeah, I do recognize. Thank you. There's a lot of things. It's kind of funny to hear that, like a list of things on a description of you. But yeah, I do recognize, and I still can say those things, what you said, and I still recognize those thoughts. And about the question, what are the things we don't talk maybe openly enough? It's a kind of a paradox that we want to be nice to each other, which is of course nice, who wants to be rude? But I think there's a kind of I think we're not brave enough on raising the difficult topics where we don't agree. Obviously, nowadays you see in the social media that we can, of course, strongly disagree. We live in different bubbles, and then there we can anonymously throw things to each other's faces. But I don't kind of that's a different thing. But then when it's not a dialogue. It's just it's just throwing crap on the floor and thinking someone might pick it up. But if we think in a working community where you would need to have the dialogue, so I don't think we're not super mature in having a constructive dialogue or skills in argumentation or trying to find solutions. I think we could be better at that. And I'm trying to figure out why is it? Why do we think that being polite and nice is somehow against that kind of a debate or argumentation or having the difficult discussions? I think there's something in the thing that we also have some sort of a social distance. So it might be related to that when we think of Finland as such and our culture, that we want to keep the social distance, but then at the same time, if you want to have that difficult dialogue, then you might be entering into you're in the zone where you're not maybe comfortable of being.
Yeah. Are there certain topics that you would welcome into the discussion?
Well, I think maybe the things like if we go into like in a more detailed level on what are the topics as such, I think actually one of the things is actually around diversity, even though we are talking about much more than when I started in working life, when it kind of didn't exist or we didn't have that at all, basically. But still, I think there's still a lot of also taboos that you're kind of afraid that you will be cancelled, or what is this ever the word, cancelling, out in public, that you don't want to say things wrongly or interpret it wrongly, so you end up saying nothing at all, and you kind of wish that it would just go away, that I don't know enough about this topic around different sexual orientations, minorities around that, or I don't understand cultural differences enough, or the gender diversity is only about women and men, and then I don't kind of understand that enough, or whatever is the topic, and then you kind of end up like talking in a really general level. And that is, for example, one thing that I think it's, at least I am a bit afraid of posting things in LinkedIn or saying aloud stuff where I think that I might hurt someone because I'm not skilled enough in the topic. So that's maybe one thing. And then the kind of the constant or eternal topic, which I think is kind of this, maybe the topics around performance. Because we kind of, I don't think we want to talk about performance when it comes to sports. There it exists, but it kind of doesn't exist anywhere else. Whereas at the same time, we know it does. But then it's again about those expectations discussions, how well we are articulating those. And so that is also maybe something that we are kind of circulating around maybe, and ending up in a weird places because we don't have that. What I expect from you, what do you expect from me as a leader? What are the outcomes? How do we measure those? Should we measure those? And then that will, like you all know, it will lead into difficult topics if you have avoided that for years.
Right.
So I would say at least those two. And then maybe 1/3, I don't think that's maybe something we avoid talking, but I don't think we don't know how to talk about it, is actually the skills and competencies, which is interesting that we don't know the difference between learning and competencies, which is like the competence is an end result of something that you practice. And then also the shift, I just read about this trend report where it was also stated that the how quickly the skills will be renewed. It was like something like how quickly some skills are kind of not needed anymore. And it has been like in the previous history, it has been like very long time, but now it's really short time. So it means that we have to upskill all the time. And I think there is like having an education is of course important, but it's not actually a measure of any skills yet, unless you kind of do something with that. So I think there is also something we should maybe talk about more and have some kind of a more common language for that.
It's an interesting, I think I read the same thing, because I think one of the biggest comparisons it said is that key skills and competences used to last across generations. Yeah. Which meant the sort of the master, student, apprentice type of relationship was incredibly important. But as those time horizons come into one generation and then even less, those relationships are going to become less and less significant. Yeah. And there's a kind of, it's not exactly pride, so I don't know how to describe it, but there is a type of pride in the way we do things, right? That's really apparent in Finnish leaders and in Finnish tenured employees. And I think somehow it's kind of unfair, right? Because they're losing something. And they're not losing it, to the next generation. They're losing it based on the circumstances of these decreasing cycle times on skill development. But I think that sense of I should be able to pass on my knowledge to the next generation is a big loss for people.
Yeah, and I think it's also, obviously at my age as well, I'm personally thinking of the fact that what are the skills that are actually, what is relevant anymore? The things that I learned 30, 20 years ago, like what is relevant, and like how biased I am in terms of how I kind of passing that and what I'm passing, and should I pass it, and like what should I actually think about, how much I should actually learn from the newcomers, and not vice versa. So it's like, I think it's one thing to maybe understand that how aware you are of your ability to learn new skills, and especially, of course, unlearn, which is always harder. But I don't also think that everything we learned before is somehow not needed. It's because the knowledge is obviously always kind of built on what we already know. So it cannot hang on the air. It's attached to something, and we have to understand that. But I also think that one particular thing around, like especially in the knowledge work or the expert work, is that we are attaching our knowledge and competencies so much into our professional identity. And that is an issue, because if that is your identity, that I know this and I'm good at this, and then this vanishes, does it mean that I am vanishing? Like, what is happening to my professional identity at that point? So I think that is a question, that what are the things we build our identity with as professionals? Is it with the learning skills, the potential of learning, the kind of curiosity, and what are those qualities, instead of like, okay, I've nailed that I know this and that's my identity, and then then that can be kind of fixed mindset type of thing.
Just wanted to say, I think it's very related to the mindset, and sort of that what you're just talking about brings me back to what you said about diversity and unlearning some ways of thinking that relates to our perception of diversity, different identities, an appreciation of inclusion today. And that requires a lot of unlearning also. And you need to recognize how your mind works and what is fixed in your mind, and then sort of untangling that.
Exactly. And that, I think, has been the most interesting part of my job during the past 5 years, where I've been also really heavily involved in the diversity work, where reading different books and talking with different people, and kind of just somehow, one morning you wake up and you sit in the train and you realize that, oh my God, this is how I've been thinking for the whole my life. How is it that I have not been aware of this? And then you kind of, when you start to realize those patterns, it's also kind of frightening, because then you already start to know that, okay, if this is true, most likely I have a lot of other things that I don't realize,
right?
Because they are not kind of shown to me. And well, my kids are good teachers because they are in different generation, and they can kind of bring in the like things that are kind of very evident in their world but new to me. So that's a good thing. But
they don't hesitate to say
they don't
out.
hesitate, and that's good.
Point it out.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Now we have a question actually about your leadership philosophy. So how would you describe it in a couple of sentences?
Yeah, this is an interesting thing. I think my leadership philosophy is very much based on a couple of factors. I don't know if I can put this into sentences. Let's see. I think it's more than two. But some things is really important to me. One is around encounters, like how, as a leader, everything is about presence. Do you have the ability to make others feel that they have been heard and they have been seen? And that is, I think, the biggest item in my leadership philosophy, that I want to be a leader where people around me feel that they are being heard and seen. It's about being present in where you are, and being able to be present in all those encounters, in those situations, whether it's live or online or wherever. It's a heavy thing. It's not easy to be in that way, building those encounters. And then if we go like one step back, why I believe in that and why that is one of the key items is that obviously my leadership is really much based on trust, not on control. And if it is based on trust, it means that there has to be a genuine interest in other people, because trust is built in encounters. If you don't know the people, it's really, of course you have the trust as firsthand, like, we meet at the first time and then I trust you. You don't have to kind of earn it to do something before it happens. But at the same time, I think you need to also build the relationship, and then it kind of gets deeper. So that is very much in essence, like having the trust, and then being present in every encounter that you have around you, people around you. And then maybe the third one is around encouragement. For me, very kind of important situations in my career has been a couple of kind of encouragement moments. So that has been, I would say, the past 10 years. If you would have asked this 15 years ago, this last thing would most likely not have been on my list, but now it is, because I have seen the power of it. So being encouraging whenever you can. People usually know when things have not turned out very well. So you don't necessarily have to pinpoint that. I mean, you have to, of course, I'm not saying that you would, avoid the difficult discussion, but you need more encouraging, strength spotting, and kind of showing people that you can actually be more. You have potential to be more. Have you thought about this? Have you, having this landscape of possibilities. So you don't have to have the landscape of failures and pointing all the possible places that it might go wrong. People need encouragement. So I would say that these three things, everything is based on trust. Then you have the encounters where you have to be present. Otherwise, you don't know, you cannot lead if you are not present. Everything, you cannot plan your leading. You have to be present, what happens and what is there in front of you. Yeah. And then there's I'm not saying helping others, I say encouraging others, because people have the potential. They do their things themselves, but you have to encourage them so that their potential becomes visible for themselves, not for you, because, they don't have to show it to you. They have to show it to themselves.
Right.
It's such an interesting distinction between help and encouragement, because I think, quite often we talk about things like the hero leader. And quite often in my experience, becoming the hero leader figure happens by accident. It happens by being present and being trusted by your people, but then not knowing when to step away. Because if you're there making space and making everybody feel good, and they trust you to solve problems and they trust you to give direction, but then you don't give the encouragement, everything ends up falling into your lap.
Exactly. I know, I've been there. That's definitely one of the biggest challenges that I faced in my leadership career, is that, and it has been kind of painful, because then you actually have to answer to the question that, why did I take this to my table? I just said that I trust people. So why this is now happening? And I think it's again a paradox. You want to help, you want to encourage, you want to, I don't know, you want to be liked as a leader. Yeah. And then that happens. And then you have to be very careful in terms of being present is not the same thing as fixing things for others. Like, how can you make the distinction that, okay, here we are, you have this issue on your table, you want to solve that. I can still be present, but I'm not touching it. It's like we can together look at it, but I'm not taking it to my table, because then that would be a sign for you that I don't actually trust you to being able to. Of course, I know. Of course, there's always at some point that people might also need help, but that would need to be like a specific situation where everything else has been done, or end up you have some obstacles and you have to do something as a leader to make them go away. But I think there would need to be some consideration before you end up actually into that helper who's not actually growing anyone. And the people around you is kind of waiting for you to make those decisions or showing their direction. Of course, leaders need to show the direction. Yeah. I'm not saying that, but you have to kind of invite people to think the direction not just just run there, go there, and it's so that's you have to also give up basically as a leader on your need for, which you obviously have if you are a leader, that you most likely have been in places where you have solved stuff. So that's what you need to kind of give up.
Right.
Yeah, you have to let go of the thing that got you where you are.
Yeah.
You mentioned that 15 years ago, encouragement would not have been on your list. Were you disencouraged at some point in your career?
No, I don't think I was disencouraged, but I don't also think that I was encouraged. So I had a couple of situations where I was really encouraged. So I kind of see what it means. So what big difference can it actually make? And then that brought me to the place where, you don't have to actually be discouraging, but it could be that you are not encouraging either. So you're kind of flat. You don't actually do anything. Yeah. But I think that for example, one occasion where I remember this very clearly, this was maybe 10 years ago, where I had been putting out together a presentation on some, most likely some development program, because that's what I've been doing a lot. Maybe a leadership development or whatever development, bigger thing. And I was supposed to present that for leadership team or whatever the instance was. And then I presented to my leader, and then in that session, it was kind of, they said that, well, basically that you have potential to do better. And I was kind of shocked first and very angry and like, okay, there's nothing is enough for these people. And, I worked my ass off and, and then it took kind of 2 days maybe to calm down and have another discussion. They're like, was it so bad? And then I always remember what was said to me, that it was really good. But I know that you have potential for more. And I would not say this if I would not think that you have.
Right.
And then I was starting to think again that which is that I want? Do I just want people to say every time that, yeah, this is great, this is great, this is great? Or do I actually want to grow? And do I actually want to learn? And then after that, I kind of started to think a lot more. I was a leader at that point as well as myself. So I started to think about this, that how am I behaving with my team members in this kind of a situation? And maybe I should think about that how am I just being nice all the time? Or, just, being nice and not, avoiding those maybe, or can I say those things directly that, yeah, this is good, but actually I think you can maybe push a bit more, that I don't see your, the thinking that you have, I don't now see it here.
Right.
So could you maybe elaborate this and that more? So that was one thing. And then there was another incident where I was kind of really kind of thinly suggesting to my leader at that point, my book idea, which I was like super, what would be the word? Like, even almost like, I can't say this aloud because, how could I ever write a book? And then when I said it to him and he was like instantly, of course you write a book. That's a super good idea. Of course you do it. And then I was like, okay, like, can you think that way? Are you allowed to be that bold? Like, don't you need to be more humble or, and that was, again, like a turning point, like a really small thing, that how he reacted in that situation was super important. And then I again started to think like, okay, how much power another person can actually have in our thinking. Of course, there's still a long way of actually writing the book, but I mean that it's still, those couple of things have made me think that what I say as a leader and how I react and what is my approach can have quite a big difference.
Yeah.
Can I push a bit more here at this stage using your words? So how do you actually do leadership in your
My-
daily work? So how do you show presence? How do you indicate trust? How do you encourage people?
Yeah,
Like
you mean in my work?
Your daily
Yeah.
work. Exactly.
Well, I think you could ask this from my team members, but I try I try to explain how I think I do it, and then obviously there's the perception and how it is experienced. One item is obviously that whenever I've always said that I'm there for them, they are not for me, I am for them. So one thing is obviously that whenever there's anything that they approach me, I try to be really quick in answering or quick in replying something. Obviously, I'm not waiting 24 hours to answer any Slack messages, but still, like, at least giving, like, okay, I see this, I hear this, let's come back to this, and that there's like a contact immediately that, okay, what is there? And then also I try to kind of sense that there's a person saying that, could we have a small, quick call? I usually know that this is going to be, if they want to call, it's not something you can write easily. So most likely I should react now. So I try to also sense a bit on what is actually the situation. And of course, how do you do that? How do you give the feeling that you are there for them? It's not only about saying that. It's, of course, what have I done? Like, is this true? Have I only said it or have I done it? So that's, of course, something that you cannot just say it, you have to do it as well. Then another thing is that I try to also articulate when something is difficult for me. Like, if we are in a conflict resolution or any kind of a situation where I sense that this is now, that we have something other things in our mind than the topic we're discussing. So I also try to articulate in the beginning of the meeting that I am actually now a bit worried how this will go, and I'm really emotional, and I'm like, trying to say it aloud so that people don't have to guess, having like a blank face that where is this person now coming from? Obviously, then more practical level, having the one-on-ones and having like in the calendar, just, booked time for them, whether, it's their time. So not saying that, okay, I don't have anything for you, so let's cancel this. Rather that it's their time with me. But I think it's a good question when you need to do what. Having that team meeting, sensing that, okay, this person was not now himself or herself, I will call them after the meeting and ask, did I got this impression, is everything okay? But what is that, what you then do? How do you put that into words? Is it like sensing the energy or
I think
whatever?
We all have an inbuilt, let's say, mechanism for empathy, right? So you can tell if somebody's happy or sad.
Yeah.
By the same token, most people can tell if you ask somebody, hey, did you do that thing?
Yeah.
Then if they go, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody can tell when it's done
Yeah.
and covered, and when it's
Yeah.
done and maybe not covered, and
Yeah.
when somebody might be also lying.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same perception. It's just you have probably a broader scope, right? So you have a little bit better tuning on empathy, on your sort of empathy.
Yeah, and trying to, and I think that is important when building the connection, because there is the saying, I don't know who said it, but you have to first build the connection and then lead. It doesn't go the other way around. That you first lead and then you start to build connection. People don't listen to you if you don't have the connection. But then it's also, I think, one thing where how do you build the connection and the trust is that you ask for help. That, I don't know what to do. We would need to build the people agenda for 2024, and I'm a bit puzzled. What should I put here?
Yeah.
Which, that you're taking people with you to build things and not just presenting things. Of course, there's also the line, like sometimes you do just present that this is how it is, and let's figure it out. How do we work, implement it? But I think those are I try to be as honest as possible on how I feel, how I experience, what is relevant for me, what I don't know, what I know, and of course I'm trying to also understand what the same from them, what is valuable for them, I use many times in meetings when we are in a development discussion, for example. There's obviously a lot of templates and a lot of, how can you do that? But I always start those with the question that, what is important for you that we talk today? Because it might be something entirely different. Actually, I'm not they might say, I'm not in a mood of talking about my long-term career goals. I have this issue that is bugging me. We need to get this first out of the table, and then we might move into this and that. So kind of always trying to, build the connection that what is relevant, what is happening in you, and not, okay, this is what we should do now.
You have nothing to do, and you're listening to the FLT podcast.
You should be studying, and you're listening to the FLT podcast.
Could you talk a bit more about, what kind of experiences have shaped this kind of approach in your leadership? You talk about encouragement that you had, maybe something else?
Well, I think it has been some of the occasions where I have had the courage of trying it out. Like I have had maybe the feeling that with my team member that, okay, this is not now working. I have to interrupt this and ask okay, what is happening? This is not, this is a theater now, what we're having.
Yeah.
This
is a drama.
Yeah. Okay, let's pause. And it has also, of course, in those situations, I have also felt that it worked and it was a good thing. And that have, of course, shaped my thinking that, okay, I should do this more. But also, on the other hand, I have sometimes hesitated a lot with my leaders that should I bring this or that up? And what happens if I do? And whether it's wise or not. And obviously, over the past 20 years, I have tried out different stuff. And sometimes it has been a good thing and sometimes it hasn't. And I think all those experiences, whether good or bad, have obviously shaped how I have been treated. And then also the mistakes that I have done as a leader. I remember one time I have always been really bad. Well, not really bad, but I have been a bit bad in bringing constructive feedback. That has not been my strength because I want to be nice
okay.
and liked. So I have had to learn that a lot. So sometimes I have had the experiences where not being clear has led into a situation where the other person is actually really confused. That you're giving a feedback and then you're not actually giving it. And then you say, well, I did give you feedback. And you're like, okay, I didn't hear that actually, because you said all these good things. What are you trying to say now? And I have had to apologize that, okay, that it's somehow in a weird way it has become about me and not them, which is weird because it should not be about me if we're talking about the person. So it's and then I remember that this has been really situations where the other person is actually ending up encouraging me, which is okay, it's a weird. I have tried to learn away from that, but those have been really. I'm not proud of those moments.
Is that a woman thing, by the way? Is that is it something that women need to be nice, or we are brought up in having to be nice?
That could be.
I mean, I could also juncture here that it's a Finnish thing for sure. So I mean, all the feedback that I've had over my career, and then all the discussions that I've had with leaders, Finns are very good in short communication. Right. So the example you gave before of being encouraged.
Yeah.
I got that from a leader, probably bleep his name, but back in the day.
Yeah.
when I was a sort of junior and I'd done a bunch of sort of quite impressive stuff, he said to me once, you can just do stuff. Like, and I was like, what? And he was like, just, try it. Yeah. And it meant like you'd go get vendors, talk to external companies, hire a team, bring in interns.
That was encouragement.
That was it. No.
Finish time.
But that wasn't finished encouragement. You could just do stuff. And
do it.
And I was like, honestly, from that sentence, I probably got 3 more jobs, like for the next 5 years.
Exactly.
Because it just opened like you said, my head, I was thinking that I can't try things.
Yeah.
And he said, you can. And I was like, okay, great, I'll try it.
Yeah, it was like the book thing for me. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, just do it.
Just do it. And then, that
like,
worked.
Okay.
Conversely, when Finns have tried to give me nuanced feedback, right, or have tried to tell me, you're performing really well, I think you could take the skills you have and apply them in a different area. It's always come across like you should find another job. and I always end up scratching my head going like, are we cool? Is there something going on here?
But are you trying to say me something that you're not actually saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was like, because it's not like you to send me like hidden messages or mixed messages. And he's like, no, I'm just trying to say you good. And I'm like, okay.
And then exactly. And I think what you said about, is it a women thing? Yeah, it might be, but I think it could be also a Finnish thing, not only for women. But of course, I think young girls are brought up, being nice, you get good feedback, you're just a nice girl, so that of course is something to do there. But I think it's also that what I just only have maybe learned in the recent 5 years, I had a good colleague who has been using this phrase of clear is kind, which is, I don't know who said it, but it's a
good one.
Clear is kind. And he has taught me that it's always better to be clear, even if it hurts, because being unclear for a long time hurts even more. So that is something that I have tried to learn and be more clear, even though it might end up that I know that the other person, their feelings get hurt, but it's still thinking it another way around, that what is appreciation? Like if I would not be told some feedback because people think that I can't take it, I would be offended. I would be more offended on the fact that they think that way, that I can't handle it, like I'm some kind of a kid who would just, cry around. And even if I would, that's my thing. If I want to cry around, then then I do it. But it's like, so I try to always remember that we should have this adult conversation, and we should think that, okay, do I want that I would be treated this way, that I'm not telling this? Then obviously there's also the fact that sometimes you just don't have I've been as a leader also in the situations where I actually have tried to articulate particularly that this is the feedback, this is what the customer said, like from word to word. And still there's okay, I don't get the message through.
Yeah, I didn't.
We suddenly end up discussing how awful the customer was, which was not the point. The point was that this is the feedback.
Yeah.
There's another question whether the customer was this or that. We can have that as well, but let's deal with this first. First.
Yeah, your point about timeliness is quite. That's where timeliness comes back into it. If you think about I've got some experience of large scale IT projects, and if you're not clear at the start, you end up with a bunch of problems that it's basically too late to fix. The closer you get to go live, you go well, that's good information now.
Yeah.
But
we should have had that a year ago.
What we're building now is what we're building now. That's already that's gone. Yeah. And actually, I was quite interested with IT projects in mind and development projects in mind. With Solita, you've kind of more recently expanded your operations into different countries. Yeah. Have you noticed any differences in communications or styles or approaches in leaders from countries that are with non-Finnish leaders?
Yeah, definitely. That's an interesting topic. And as we have been growing so fast, only in 5 years, we suddenly have 8 countries, and then we had 1. So it's like whoever has ever done anything around culture, that it takes time. So it's not something that, one day this and next day that. And of course also that we've been growing organically and also buying companies, acquiring companies. So it means that it's like different types of growth at the same time. And I think that obviously we are only in Europe, which is again narrowing kind of, if we would be going like to Asia or US, I think it would be bigger differences. If you think of Sweden, Denmark, Norway, they're kind of, we still are on the same, there are a lot of similarities as well. But I think what has been one of the things that was kind of, for example, interesting, that when we were talking about autonomy, and I ended up in a discussion in Sweden with one employee, we have this cultural kind of a statement that we have high levels of autonomy combined with the high levels of caring and the culture of caring. And then we had this person was saying that, okay, what does this autonomy mean? And I was like, okay, so I didn't see this coming, like that should we now discuss on autonomy? Like, I thought that it's kind of evident what it means. But then we actually organized sessions together with the employees, I think it was 4 or 5, to just discuss about that. Because it was kind of apparent that it doesn't maybe have the same, so we cannot just, even if we have been discussing about it like years and years, we can't just, bring it and drop it in some country and say that we have this autonomy, like whatever it is. And then I think also it is super, has been super useful to talk about, like, just ask, like, what are the things that are taboos? And we might find different things. Or how acceptable, for example, it is to talk about mental well-being in different cultures. It might not be the same thing everywhere. We are really, I think, really open in Finland when it comes to these topics, at least now, or at least in Solita, we are. People are openly sharing to in the community, and we have a lot of services for that. But then it's not maybe something that you instantly, understand in different countries. For example, we're using Outi, which is this online coaching service. That you can, that if you book a time from there, is that kind of, is it okay? Yeah. And we are even introducing that service for all the newcomers in part of the onboarding, because changing jobs is so stressful. Whether it's good or bad stress, it's still, it's a stressful situation. So those are the things. And then one area around leadership, I think, is around hierarchy and positions. There's more, I think, more in the European area, like who's leader is more somehow relevant than I think in Finland. And we have, even though obviously we in Finland have also, we are already 2,000 people, so we have layers. So it would be wrong to say anything else, but it's not something that you would kind of underline somehow that this is the leader of that, and then it's. But I think that it's kind of, we have, I think it comes somehow between the lines or somewhere, that it's also somehow more important to know, like, who is who. And when and so that is maybe something that I have also learned.
When acquired, it was funny when the first discussion started, and meeting your colleagues in HR or in communications, and the first thing people said was always who they report to. And it was remarkable. It was always like, do I need to say who I report to?
How is that important?
And they mentioned the person by name. And it was a really sort of a cultural insight that, okay, this is important for them. This is how their mind works.
And then also I think it's somehow like they might have also the kind of when I talked about this autonomy and obviously that is a topic that has been in, it's not some Finnish topic, obviously. But I think it's these two things are maybe somehow intertwined. That, and also I think as a comparison, when in Finland I might be asking that from some employee that, okay, what like in which unit you work, and and who is, do you remember the person who's leading the unit, and they might, I don't know. it's not
it's not important.
it's not
Yeah.
I do my job, and it's they do their job, and it's not something. So that's maybe something. And then obviously one thing that I've been thinking is that, well, we always talk how well the culture travels across the borders, how well the values travel across the borders. But of course, one thing that our CEO is also always saying, that when we are acquiring companies, we would not acquire a company that would be too different from the cultural background, because then then it just doesn't travel anymore. If doing your study
Due diligence.
in advance, that how well this can be, how this fits into the family is of course super important, because you cannot do magic. It's like you can only do something, but not like too much. And then one thing that we also want to very much encourage, and what is important, is that even if we have the same value base, we have the same cultural kind of aspiration, we have same thinking around diversity topics and so forth, we also want to keep the local flavor. So the intention is not to force that now everyone in Belgium has to be the same as we are in Oulu, because it doesn't make any sense. So there need to be subcultures, and you need to also, because that would be kind of, if we think of the diversity I think you can think of it also in the company, like not only in terms of people, but like, do we actually accept the diversity when it comes to different flavors in the different companies and the different, well, not companies, different communities and different countries. So
and not just accept, but also
not just
appreciate.
accept, but appreciate and even learn from that. So then I think it would be kind of hypocrite to say that we have this diversity agenda, but actually you have to be exactly like us in Finland.
Yeah. Right. I need your snowshoes on when you get to work. I don't care what the weather is.
What about this one value that Solita has, which you don't really see often, is this easygoingness?
Yeah.
What exactly does it mean in Solita, and then does it actually travel to other countries?
I think that actually does, and I think it has to do also something with the field of industry we're in the tech business. I think it is kind of laid back area in general. I think how I would put it, maybe a couple of things. One thing that we want to always say is this come as you are thinking. And once you are with us, we don't want to change you. So we want you to be part of this community because who you are now, and we don't expect that when you enter to Solita, then you would become something else. So this easygoingness is that kind of not putting into people into some mold, or that everyone will wear these outfits and do this and say this and be like an army of consultants working in the same, exactly the same way. So that is one part of that. I think it's also very much on the content over form, I would say, that you appreciate more on the content, like not so much that how is it packaged, because you can see also the other way around, that you have a lot of form but there's nothing inside. So you have a beautiful cake and everything is kind of really, but it's not actually. So I think the easygoingness refers also to that you don't have to sugarcoat your stuff in order to be somehow.
In British, we'd say like substance over style.
Yeah,
right? So
that would be.
And that's a very Finnish thing, right?
Yeah.
We don't need to put the facade up.
Exactly.
We just do the work.
Yeah. And then I would say that also when it comes to our communication or the discussion culture, it's really easygoing. It's really laid back. That everyone is in the same. Having the Slack. We're using Slack, and we have all the. We have 1,000 different topics and leaders and employees. Everyone is there mixed. Talking about whatever. So it's not formal, I would say. There's not that much. I've been thinking of our CEO putting out the monthly update, business update, and putting in the end like the Spotify list of the songs that he'd be listening while putting this together. I think it's like there's a lot of things that are not that formal, but those are the things that come to my mind as the things are not, we're like super professional, but not serious.
That's what we're trying to be here as well. Yeah, we can take notes from that as well.
I think Solita is not the typical consultancy company, right? Where usually form tends to dominate over content.
Yeah.
So good to hear.
Secret to the success, I think.
One
Yeah.
key question that we ask everyone, actually, because one of the idea of this podcast is really to distill the essence of Finnish leadership. So do you see any essential features in Finnish leadership that
This is what I was trying to think hard before this on my way here. That do I really? I would say that one thing is not actually, maybe it is kind of, it's visible in leadership, but I think it's a trait that Finns have in general. When we give appreciation, it's usually kind of,
Succinct?
it's a kind of blunt,
Blunt.
but it's like, it's not really sugar coated, you know. We don't love stuff, and we're not like, it's amazing and wonderful and we love this. We just say that, well, this was good.
Yeah.
But it really means that it was really good. I mean, ihan ok. I mean, Kimi Räikkönen won the championships, and it was like a blunt face.
Yeah, how do you feel?
Well, this is okay. Or, you know, but then it really means something. Whereas in other cultures, you might get that, oh, this is just awesome. But at the end of the day, you hear that it was a crap.
That's
so
true.
I think this is one thing, that even if we're not maybe really kind of circulating around the difficult feedback, or we, you know, maybe avoiding difficult discussions, I think when we have those and when we say stuff, we really mean that. So you don't have to second guess whether that was, you know, true or not. So that's maybe one thing, which can be also an issue when it comes to being in other cultures, because we are not so maybe good at bragging, for example. So it might, you know, end up the people, you know, you're telling about your stuff, and it's kind of, oh, it doesn't sound like really good.
But I mean, that could also be a significant problem if you want to make big developmental change, like on a broad scale, because that's, if you ever want to make a big improvement, that's a dialogue.
Yeah.
It always has to be.
Yeah.
And you have to pay good dues to the traditions so you can move forward.
Yeah.
And if you can't have that conversation, you can't move.
Yeah, exactly. And then another thing that I would maybe raise is that we are doers. We do stuff, like you said. We do stuff.
Do.
Yeah, we are just, you know, we are not just talking things. We're not just, you know, marketing things that doesn't exist. Having empty promises, having sugarcoating. And it can be also, I think, sometimes even like I hear these things, people saying, oh, you actually did this.
Yeah.
So you actually have this.
Yeah.
So kind of being surprised that you're not just talking, you have it. So I think that is something really Finnish, that if we promise to do something, then it means it. It's like the same with saying stuff. So it's that is, I think there's something really Finnish. Then maybe something a bit more negative feature or thing that we have is, I think, that we might end up not being brave enough, not in relationships, you know, saying things like what I said earlier, like saying things clearly, but also when it comes to being like dreaming big. Like I remember I was thinking like, who could I have as a speaker into one of the events, and I was like scrolling some speakers, and then I discussed this with my leader, and he said that, who do you want? Well, then I said Simon Sinek, or you know,
of course,
one of the names, if I could have anyone. And then he said that, well, why don't you ask? Well, I didn't take him. It was a bit too expensive for that. But I mean, the thinking that you don't start from what is available.
That's
you
true.
start from what I'm dreaming of.
Yeah.
And I don't think we always are very good at that, that we're settling into less because we are maybe not brave enough to dream big. At least that's what I think, that I have been a little bit too kind of narrow-minded in terms of not always being brave enough to. And I think that could be also kind of a Finnish thing. Or then it's just me. But I think we have this a bit, right?
Can I ask the last question from my chat? Very important. So what kind of music does CEO of Solita listen to?
I would say that it's a really, really broad selection, and I think it's open in Spotify to find out. But I would not, put him in one box because it's a really wide spectrum. But at least I think on the Christmas list, what he's always putting out a Christmas list and one for the midsummer, I think there was at least some tunes from Werneri Pohjola for the new album. But there was also a lot of other type of stuff. So that would not maybe mean that this is what he only listens to.
Was that We Are the Champions from Queen?
No, no, the Queen was not there.
Think big, yeah, okay.
Think big,
No,
big.
that
get
was
Queen.
not there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Outi, for your time. This has been, I could talk to you all day, but I'm really shocked at how fast the last, I think, 50 odd minutes has gone. So
Yeah, me
it's
too.
but this has been really insightful. I want to thank you so much for the time that you've given us today. And the book was Yritysmurroksessa.
Yrityskulttuurit murroksessa.
Yes, Kulttuurimurroksessa. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic read for anybody. Please go buy it and read it and have it. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much for inviting. I think it's a super interesting topic, what we're having here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was Outi Sivonen. She was fun. It was a good conversation. How do you guys feel?
Very good. There's so much. And what I liked was especially the fact that she talks about things that are difficult to articulate about leadership. Those things like sensing what's going on and connection building, encouraging, being present, authentic. I think those are things that you cannot give practical tips how to do that, but you still need to be able to lead those and build them into your company culture. So I thought that was really, really fascinating how she tried to articulate those invisible, difficult things.
And how important time with people was to her. Like, Alexei?
Well, I think she actually did share some tips how to project presence and kind of show trust and encourage. So I also found it very interesting. And I think the whole kind of description of the company where she works and of the culture is very unique and unusual. I think not often we see things like easygoingness as one of the core values. And I think it was really cool how she talked about it. Another thing that really kind of stayed with me was this power of self-reflection, this kind of the idea that you continuously need to push yourself to learn and unlearn, or learn new things and unlearn something that you know. So kind of continuous learning process is very important, and reflecting on whether what you know actually is valid or continue to be valid over time, and really kind of not being afraid to question yourself and what you believe in and so on. Maybe not what you believe in, but what you think you know, how things are. And of course, this clear is kind. That's
absolutely fabulous. Yeah.
That's something that, in my research, actually, I study a lot about, there's a few projects where we looked at the importance of like job clarity, expectations clarity for performance and for well-being of employees and so on. I think it was quite nice confirmation that this is actually really important.
Yeah, it matches the academic work.
It does.
It's also a pretty good T-shirt, right? I think that's clear as kind fits very well. It would sell.
I'll use that.
Yeah, exactly. I really liked talking with her. She was, she mentioned being easygoing in the company in Solita, and you get that feeling like she's really relaxed and comfortable. I thought she was very perceptive around the interpersonal skills that you need as a leader. She didn't go into that much depth about, I would say, like talent spotting or encouraging others to do more obviously involves having an appraisal of how far they can go as a leader. And I thought encouraging people to do more is a really good sort of piece of advice. I think it's also something that comes with a skill that we could have taken a bit more time on about, how to spot talent and how to see who can go further. But the key, I think, for me was that sort of self-reflection piece. Like, she didn't know how far she could go until somebody unlocked the permission in her mind. But then once she did, she was flying. So that's a really interesting facet. I thought she had a very good take, good and bad, on Finnish leaders. So lots more to follow up on in the coming discussions. Okay, that'll do us for another episode.
Another 2 weeks, yeah, sure. 2 weeks at a time. That's how we live.
It's 2 weeks for us, but for the listener, it's just a moment. Once again, I have to give all of my thanks to you guys for giving such a good participation, and to Bella behind the mics on the mixing board, and to Alto for giving us such fantastic facilities and equipment, and also to the guys at home listening. Thanks. We'll catch you next time.
Did you forget of that lizard?
And I have to thank Fat Lizard again, because you will give us beer. I know. I can feel it.